down. Okay? So, Anthony, as we finish on this, and I'll come to you for closing remarks shortly, I just want to hear your views on one thing that the president also said. He said that currently our taxation is at around 14%. He wants to push it to about 22% to the GDP ratio by the time he's out of the country, so that we are at par with other peers. Is this a practical statement from the president?
I think that the president is beholden to certain things, and by these things I mean the World Bank and other people who have parameters against which they want to gauge our democracy, our economic performance, parameters to do with GDP ratio of I don't know what versus what. And therefore we are being pushed to achieve certain ends which are being dictated by people who have interests other than our own interest. Yeah, I was listening to President Museveni. I can't remember what forum that was, and he was calling for a rethinking of our engagement with these institutions. And he was telling, I think he was speaking to World Bank and telling them, you have consistently talked about things like GDP, you talk about sustainable development, yeah? And he gave this narrative about, what is this sustainable development that does not end up in the common man feeling the actual impact of these indices and parameters and things you talk about. And he joked about that even a pregnant woman gets pregnant. There's no such thing as sustainable pregnancy. Yeah, you must be pregnant, and at some point the pregnancy grows, and at some point that pregnancy results into a child. If we have these GDP ratios that keep being floated by the World Bank in these conditions, and these things about we must come out from 14% to 20%, if these things don't result into a Kenyan child growing from point A to B, taxpayer and the common Wanjiku and the hustler ending up with more shilling in his pockets, if it does not end up in more resources that Kenyans can invest in other things, what exactly of what import are they to us? And we need to have a conversation, a second conversation, apart from the national platform, to discuss about this tax shilling, whether it is one man or whether it is the 1 kilometer or whatever it is. The other national conversation we must have is on this question of what exactly do these tax measures in terms of the conditions that are being put to us, the increase in taxes, the GDP statistics, call this statistic, all that. What are the principles that underpin our taxation? What is the end in view? Against what parameters must we judge the government every year that if they want to increase taxes, we must therefore see development moving it from point A to B in terms of infrastructure, in terms of education? What are those pillars? That conversation we must have, and I don't know whether this is the opportunity for me to make my closing remarks. If it's not, then I will save that. Yeah. But I think on that issue, we need to have a conversation. Before we go to the next budget and finance bill cycle, we must have that debate. Okay. What does the Constitution say? What are the legitimate expectations of the people? And what are the other third parties sitting from Bretton Woods institutions of the World Bank sitting, and how do they impact us or don't not impact us? Okay. Yes.
I'll come to you for your closing remarks shortly, but let me hear what Gakuya has to say about this. Should we keep increasing it to 22% as the president said? Because he said this expressly.
We need to look for options, and I don't think that actually the options are over. Because I think if we can see the wastage, because where we go along is wastage, and wastage in various ways. And number two, also, we look for those unperforming sagas within our ministries, merge them together, because some of them, most of them are duplication, and they offer the same services. When we move that line, then we reduce the number of them. That reducing the number of them, it means you reduce cost, and also you save more. Because if you assess the 10 years of Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, it tells you he went excessively to borrow, because he was not saving anything. And if we could have saving, then he could have not gone that election. Number two is that we have the devolution. Devolution also should also help the government to the growth of the country. And whatever money trickles down there, there has to be a way that actually people are seeing and face of development. But you can't tell us actually all these counties are only doing the current expenditure. Then what is the importance of these shops if these shops are not to deliver services? I believe the government, as much as they do disbursement to these counties, then it should be a duty of the same devolution cluster to support the government to the growth of their localities so that the national government can be left with the flagships project. And this way, I think we can move somewhere. But if you expect the same government which is at the top, it has disbursed money down there, but it is the one expected to come to do the feeder roads in every county. It will be totally difficult. So I would urge that our leaders who actually operates the counties be more prudent in service delivery, and also the national government do the same. But we should not focus to keep pinning down Kenyans in tax. We must find alternative measures, and they are available.
Okay. And now that you speak about the counties, there are some leaders who were speaking in Mombasa yesterday during the Institute of Certified Public Accountants annual seminar on the same finance bill, and they differed on the approach, including how much revenue should go to the counties. Listen.
Receiving very little money to finance activities in the counties. This is where the functions which have been devolved, we don't have the requisite resources to follow functions, to an extent that most of the time, projects are initiated, but they're not completed on time because of inadequate allocation.
Particularly when you go into the rural counties where we do not have a lot of business, you find that you are dealing with the people who are basically very poor, and the revenue streams there are very, very limited, unlike counties that are urbanized or urban counties. So there is a whole reason to look at the revenue collection. And again, we have to look at which streams do we emphasize on.
The allegation about expenditures on renovation of State House and all those other expenditures are approved by National Assembly. Do we have a division? Do we have them raise and say, we oppose this budget? It never happens. And so, if we are going to have a really honest conversation, is can we oppose the budget as much as we're opposing the revenue collection side of it? That way, all these tax measures that are being proposed don't have to be there. I told you that the finance bill of 2024 is raising 302 billion shillings. If we can cut that from the budget, we don't need to have any additional tax measures. Is anyone willing to have that conversation?
Are you willing to have that conversation, Anthony?
Yes. I'm willing to have that conversation, and I think I will move amendments to the budget estimates when they come. And one of the places we must look at is our security sector. We must have another third conversation on where we put the majority of our budget. Majority of our budget, including the biggest increase, which I think is 12 to 13%, is in interior and defense. Why do we continue to put monies to the tunes of hundreds of billions of shillings to our defense and interior when Kenya is not at war? Can we account for the last 5 years of incremental increase on this sector, on the machines? How much modernization is modernization of our security sector, and at what expense? School feeding, social protection programs, for example, where you're not giving our children a nini, you're not employing people in the CBC, teachers, or confirming. I mean, at what expense? So if you're asking me, are we willing to have that conversation? The answer is yes. Let us go to the people who are the biggest beneficiaries, which is the security sector. Let us go to our expenses section, the biggest part of that 4 trillion budget in terms of expenditure is in government.
Yeah.
Government wastage. Let's go and cut by half. Why does a CS or a PS or CAS have to drive in 4 vehicles following them? Why do we even need those CASs against a High Court decision? Yes, we are willing to have that conversation.
Okay.
Cut by half the government executive expenditure and wastage there, and then go to the security sector and defense and cut the budgets there and take them to education and
parliament as well.
Yes, we can cut parliament as well. But I am telling you, in terms of percentage, parliament and the judiciary occupy 5 and 2% respectively. 5 and 2%. Then you have maybe 15% to devolution. How much goes into national government? Nearly 70-something%. A lot of it is on expenses that we can cut.
Okay.
Yes, that is where. So my closing remark really is that as we look at this budget, we need to have an expanded conversation beyond this budget so that we don't wait for the next budget. That conversation should be on that 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling thing, which really I want to be broadened to be on the shilling, on our tax money, on the principles and fundamentals that inform and underpin, so that we know where do we take that money, bring into that discussion people who are in informal settlements and other people. Lastly, we must look at the constitutionality of every process that we are undertaking. And Omutat has raised issues of process. I want to raise one issue. There is a High Court decision that has been passed recently, and in this High Court case number E494 by Chacha Mwita on sections 24 and 25 of the Political Parties Act, which is that every year 0.3% of revenue that we collect should be given to political parties. This is not a favor that is done to one political party or to be given because Gakuya is there, so we want to slash off this money because we think Gakuya is going to benefit from this. There is also a Court of Appeal decision in 2018 that says that this money read with this decision are ring-fenced. Therefore, the decisions, 2 decisions are saying it is unconstitutional to have a situation in which less than 0.3% is given, and even that which is given, and we gave about 1.4 billion in the last financial year. In the supplementary budget, we cut 800 million. In this current budget, we have also cut the money back to 600 million. I am going to ask this House to look into the question of the constitutionality of the process so that the budget is not challenged in a court of law. We need to ensure this budget allocates to political parties no less than 0.3% as per the decisions of the court.
I would also want to put an emphasis in our right of priority in terms of budget making. A country always put the plan first because the rest must trickle from planning. And once you are planning for a foster growth of the country, you must first identify the growth pillars. And those growth pillars must be your priority first. Because in the area of industrialization, is only where we can create more and more jobs. But it seems we are not taking serious this particular sector. And that sector, the way it is, if we are not going to take any mark toward salvaging what is killing it, then it tells you we are not giving hope to Kenyans to create more jobs. Because it's only 2 areas, area of manufacturers and agriculture. Those are the 2 major where we must rely to put our resources to make sure that our people are in job. But when we don't put money there and we keep slashing, it means then our focus is losing. So I would say, as much as the budget is there, and it is a financial budget for every financial year, let us always be putting what we call priority, the country priorities first. And I will also emphasize that, yes, area of security, which has been all years taking the largest share of our revenue. We should be seeing, because it does not mean that whatever has been taken to the package of that particular area is totally exhausted.
Okay.
So it is important, as much as we want to save a lot of money in that particular sector of security, let us also consider that it should not be seen every year.
Okay.
Every year.
All right.
Because we are not buying new ammunitions every year. We are not building, because we are not at war.
Okay.
And that's for sure.
All right.
And I want to summarize by saying,
Yeah.
the country can only be successful when it does not move to the neck of the taxpayer.
Okay.
Because the taxpayer should be left a space to breathe.
All right. Thank you so much for making time this morning. Honorable Anthony Oluoch, Member of Parliament for Mathare, Honorable James Gakuya, Member of Parliament of Embakasi North, and of course, apologies from Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, who could not join us this morning. We're taking a quick break. When we come back, it's time for cooking tips, and then we'll have a conversation later on. All right? See you in a bit.